Okay, okay, okay. Just testing everything out ahead of June the 2nd. I think we're working slowly, slowly. If everybody can let me know if they can see me, that would be great. I don't know why my overlay is not working here. This funky music playing. Dee dee dee, dee dee, dee dee dee. Let's get the chat. There we go. There we go. There we go. Hello, 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 Carol. Hello, Educo. We can see everybody. Great. Well, as we all may know, or maybe you don't, I'm just going to keep this funky music playing while I introduce everything. On June the 2nd, I am going to be hosting, hi, CMBRX, Cumbrex, Cumbrex. I'm going to be hosting a 12-hour live stream, and it is going to be a fundraiser for the Cult Vault podcast and the Family Survival Trust, which is a UK-based charity that supports individuals who have been affected by cults. So it's an incredible charity. They have lots of amazing support. Alexandra Stain, leading cult expert, is one of the individuals involved with the Family Survival Trust. And I wanted to make sure that I remembered how to use all of the software and to make sure that everything looked great ahead of the June the 2nd stream. So I thought it would be a nice idea to drop in and say hi to everybody on a Saturday and see how everybody's doing, and also just to kind of bring everybody up to speed with some things that have been happening here in the background for the Cult Vault podcast. So I'll turn my chill beats off. First of all, I wanted to just say that today is the third birthday officially of the Cult Vault podcast. It was 3 years ago today that I uploaded my very first podcast episode, and what a wild ride it's been. We've had, what, as of yesterday, 249 episodes uploaded, so 250 by the time we do the by the time we do the 12-hour stream. Hello, Erica. So great to see you. Thank you for dropping in. How is everything going with your work? Because you've been doing some special appearances and talks as well ahead of the end of June's International Cultic Studies Association conference, which is going to be happening in St. Louis, Kentucky, which we will talk about during the 12-hour live stream. So today is the official third birthday of the Cult Vault podcast, even though we will be saying a massive happy birthday to the show during the 12-hour live stream. And it's been such an incredible adventure. Hi, Crimepedia. Don't know if it's Morgan or Cherry. Love you both either way. So excited to see you in 3 weeks' time. So excited. And yeah, we've had 249 episodes uploaded onto the Cult Vault podcast. There's around 40 or so exclusive Patreon episodes that aren't on the public feed. And there's also 60 or so cult news episodes. So we're looking at a catalogue of 350 to 400 episodes, which is in 3 years. I think that's quite wild. It's interesting to reflect on where the podcast where it started, and where we are today. And it's also interesting to think about all of the amazing people that I've had the chance to speak with all over the world. I wish I had a map, actually. I need a world map because I'd love to plot where in the world all of the patrons of the Cult Vault live. There are people from Japan, there are people from Australia, there are people from New Zealand. It's just a wild array of people from all over the place that support the show, and I think that's quite incredible. So one of my missions going forward is definitely to get myself a, a world map so I can pinpoint where all these amazing people live. It would be cool to do that with all of the guests I've spoken with as well. So maybe we could have two different coloured pins for the the different regions and areas that people have come forward to speak with me on the show. Some of you may have seen on Twitter today that I actually filled my last 2023 interview space for the next year and a half or so, which is wild. And it's really kind of poetic because the last space, I was approached yesterday by a good friend who has been thinking about speaking about their experience for a while, but wasn't too sure about whether people would be interested or whether their story was significant enough. And of course, everybody has a place on this podcast. And this person arrived to that decision on their own yesterday, and today went to my calendar and picked the very, very, very last date that I have available for interviews, which just kind of felt really amazing. So I'm really excited about that. I am excited for the remaining uh, 20 or so interviews that I have left for this year, two of which will take place tomorrow. One of which is going to be a talk that I think will be very, very close to my heart. The other is with uh, uh, two individuals for their podcast, and I always enjoy those because people give you the chance to just go as I'm doing right now. Feel free to put any text, questions, chat in the comments to avoid me from just kind of going and going and going and going. So I'm going to be having a very powerful talk tomorrow, which I'm really looking forward to. Um, and then in September, I will be enrolling onto the or starting rather the Psychology of Coercive Control postgraduate course at Salford University, which a handful of individuals that I really admire have gone on to take part in and complete, who I spoke to at length before I decided to look into the course. Chris Shelton, Jen Kiava, Diana Levy, Ashlyn Hilliard. There were a number of individuals I spoke with. And what's been really quite fascinating about that experience is a number of individuals that I've spoken to is they've said, "Oh, I'm thinking about enrolling into a course to learn more about this," and then they come forward and they say, "I'm thinking about enrolling into the Salford course." And I did have an interaction with an individual who messaged me on Facebook to say, "I've been listening to your work." I always really appreciate those messages and emails. So if anybody ever wants to get in touch with me, you can find me at cultvaultpodcast@gmail.com or at Cult Vault Pod at Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. I really appreciate interactions with people, even if it's for constructive criticism. Um, so I spoke to this individual who also decided they were then ready to share their story. So we talk back and forth quite regularly, and we both applied for Salford at the same time, and we both got in. And then I interviewed this person, and they told their story on the record. So that feels kind of like a highlight of this year as well. It's really been quite something to to have that experience. So this is just me kind of talking about 3 years of the Cult Vault podcast. Um, Oh, thanks, Verity. Oh, thanks for tuning in. It's great to see you here. See, a family cult for 30 years. How did you come to how did you come to realize that that was your personal situation? It's a difficult thing to identify at times, and it's interesting to see how many people forward talking about. their involvement or their life growing up in a family cult. And I find that really interesting, and I'm always really keen to find out the paths that people have taken to arrive at that knowledge. And I really hope that it is helping you to attempt some type of recovery and seek out some support, whether that's therapy or support from others who have experienced similar things, or even thinking about coming to share your story on somebody's podcast. Please do if you feel like sharing. Of completely, if you don't want to, completely respect and appreciate that as well. Um, so there's a few things I wanted to talk about whilst I'm here. Um, First of all, it was happy birthday to the Cult Vault. Amazing. Thank you all so much for the continued support. Like, wild. Who would have thought? I definitely didn't. But it's great. It's great. And I'm so thankful to be doing this work still. It feels like I don't know if I believe in a calling, but I do believe that when we fall into what we are um what we have a knack for, we can feel it. And that's kind of what I feel like. Verity says, um, how do we highlight certain? Here we go. This is me learning the software. I don't know if it's because I was abused that I do not conform to anyone telling me what to do or what not to do, and I've been this way for years. Well, that I imagine could land you in a lot of trouble. But also important to maintain our independent thought and critical thinking at all times as much as possible, which of course is easier said than done when we are discussing the nefarious tactics employed by cult-like environments that are honed over decades and decades and decades, that take inspiration and teachings from ancient civilizations, as I talked about in today's episode about Eva's Eden, the cat cult, which is available now on the Cult Vault podcast for anyone that's interested. And a number of other things that I wanted to talk about include this amazing platform that Ajuko, who is here in the chat, maybe still, hopefully, um, helps with every single day. And this is a subreddit. So Reddit, for anybody that's not sure, Reddit is like a website that's made up of hundreds and maybe hundreds of thousands of forums about the most random things. There's one called Babies Trapped in Knees, and it's pictures of people that look like they have babies' faces in their kneecaps. Like, this is how obscure Reddit is. So on Reddit, you can pretty much find a forum that is specific to your niche. And for our niche in the realm of this podcast, we are looking at cult podcasts. And uh, there is a cults subreddit where some people have some really uh, poignant and tangible discussions, and some other people post the most bizarre things, as you can as you can probably imagine. There's a lot of stuff around occultism, carvings in trees. What does this symbol mean? Um, but there's a lot of cult survivor forums and subreddits. And then there was a content creator called Frankie Tees, that some of you may have heard of or worked with, who started a subreddit called Cult Podcasts, um, and invited myself and Ajuko to be moderators of the subreddit, and eventually stepped down. And since then, Ajuko and I have been, well, I say Ajuko and I, Ajuko's been constantly, uh, prolifically posting cult podcast episodes in this subreddit. So if I will just get the link up, but if anybody is interested in cult podcasts, of hearing about different shows, different content that's being released, maybe you are looking for a limited series, maybe you're looking for weekly shows, there's all sorts of different posts that are put up mostly by Juco in the in the cult podcasts subreddit. We did used to do weekly catch-ups as well on Tuesdays, and sadly those had to stop because um for some reason Reddit just decided that they were gonna uh let go of that feature, which is unfortunate because we were just starting to get a good group of people come together to share their podcasting tips and tricks and what work they'd been doing in the week. And we always finished on a segment about self-care, which is important when people do this work. So Ryan Anthony Hernandez from the Truth That Heals podcast would come and join me every Tuesday. And we had individuals like Aldo B. Martin and Andrew Pledger. And a number of other individuals. And Chris Shelton was going to come and join us on the week that they stopped that service. So it is unfortunate, but r/cult podcasts is a subreddit where you can go and find all manner of podcasts linking to cults, which is amazing. And I couldn't thank Aduko enough for the continuous effort that goes into maintaining that subreddit, because I always say I need to do more and I need to upload more, and I just don't get round to it. CMBRX says, I've been reading that here in San Francisco, there was a boom of new cults related to the influx of people during the hippie movement, late 60s, early 70s. Yeah, which is when this family moved here from LA. This group preys on good people with good jobs and tries to break them down, then offer a solution to the person's problem. It's all done very covertly and very difficult to prove or explain. That sounds really tough. CM, that sounds like a really, really tough and tricky situation. It doesn't sound like something we've never discussed on the podcast before. We have had individuals come forward and talk about secret societies and hidden schools and groups on the podcast that operate much in this way. We've had individuals come forward to talk about religious groups that have these very discreet um, and almost cloak and dagger recruitment and retainment tactics. I was just doing a cult news episode on Shinchunji today, which is very in keeping with the way that this religious group from South Korea operates. Is there any more information that you can give us on this particular group? I think you have really hit the nail on the head there, saying that there was a boom of new cults related to the 60s and 70s counterculture movement and disenchantment with government and many things that we've talked about on the show in the past, especially linking to Patreon deep dives that I've done on the podcast around the Source family and Charles Manson and the Manson family and the Satanic Panic, the rise of the moral panic in America and the world across the well, it really kind of blew up in the 80s, but there are a few decades of a building up to that point in the 80s, and almost we're back here again. It's pretty wild to see people always say history repeats itself, and I'm starting to feel like we're at that point now, again. Um, so yes, cult podcasts, please go and check it out. If you have any cult podcasts that you listen to, um, please go and post them in the subreddit, because we would love to find new shows, more shows, things we don't know about. If you have a particular episode of a favorite podcast from last week or last year or 10 years ago in some OG cases, then please go and post them in the cult podcasts subreddit. And now I will stop going on and on and on about Reddit and move on to something else. A few other things I wanted to talk about whilst we are here, and one of those is the upcoming 12-hour live stream. So on June the 2nd, I will be live for 12 hours. So from 6 p.m. England time or UK time to 6 a.m. UK time, which is 1 p.m. Eastern time to 1 a.m. Eastern time in America. Um, we have so many amazing guests. I will give you a sneak peek actually into some of the guests, right? So we have Erica Bourneman, Rani Singh, and Tamara MC, three incredibly strong women, all coming to do the first talk. And the panel is titled Loved Ones Inside a Group That We Are Not a Part of. So that's going to be really powerful. That's going to be three really strong, really brave, informed women coming forward to talk about their difficulties and the implications of having loved ones still inside a high control group. I can't talk enough about the importance of discussing the entire picture of an individual's involvement with or an individual's well, Esther Friedman would say misadventure, tenure within a group affects so many people. And even though we may not have been a part of or are no longer a part of a destructive and cultic environment, the implications of loved ones that are within this group is it's hard to comprehend. Um, and I'm sure we'll get into all of those things. I don't want to give too much away or speak for the women that will be attending the stream. So that's the first session, and the second session is going to be with Lisa Van Arsdale and Siren Warner. So Lisa Van Arsdale, if you if you listen to this show, I absolutely love Lisa. You may have heard me talk with Lisa about her time infiltrating cults. So Lisa's hobby, her pastime, which is just wild to me, and I'm so worried that she's going to get swept up one day, which is a very real thing that could happen. I say that with a smile on my face, but seriously, it's genuinely a very real thing that could happen, and I do not recommend anybody do this, and I do not condone this for anybody, even Lisa. And I told this to her in our interview together. She has spent time with the 12 tribes. She went to a celebration day for the Rod of Iron Ministries, which is run by Sean Moon in Pennsylvania, the son of Some Young Moon. He wears a crown of bullets and has an AR-15 Colt. So if you hear people talk about the AR-15 Colt, they're typically referring to Sean Moon in Pennsylvania. So Lisa's going to be coming to talk with me about her experiences of infiltrating cults, but also going out to Texas to meet investigative journalist Siren Warner, who has been looking at an obscure cult in Texas called Profundity Yours, who had a recent doomsday date come and go. And interestingly, Siren has been creating some TikTok videos that have just blown up across the internet. There is a real interest in learning about some of the lesser known cults. And Siren does a really good job on his TikTok videos of really showing how obscure cults and infamous cults still have the same generic practices, recognizable trademarks and earmarks from one group to the other. So it will be really interesting to hear about Siren and Lisa's work. They went out to Texas. Profundity Yours it functions out of a trailer park, but it's expanding into nearby villages and areas. And the locals are apparently quite scared by this. So they went into people's houses, interviewed local people. So it's shaping up to be something quite incredible. And I'm really looking forward to bringing that to you to talk to you about those things. Hi, Annie. I hope you're having a great Friday. I mean, I don't know where everybody I know where some people are in the world and what time it is. It's coming up for 9 p.m. here, so it's a little bit later. You might be able to hear my children in the background thinking about going to bed. And the next panel is going to be with Chris Shelton and Stephen Mather. So Chris Shelton is a former Scientologist who has the most incredible back catalogue of information. Chris's brain is just like a whole library of information. And of course, he has also recently graduated from the Salford course. Hi, Bob. Great to see you. See you in 3 weeks. I can't wait. I hope you wear your Colt Vault hoodie that you managed to get for free. um, I'm really looking to the panel with Chris Shelton and Stephen Mather. So Stephen is a former Jehovah's Witness who is a co-host of the Cult Hackers podcast that he hosts with his daughter Celine. And what is fantastic about Stephen's work is that he can look at things through the lens of his own experiences, but also in his studies around group behavior and organizational behavior. So I think it's going to be really interesting to look at the parallels between Scientology and the Jehovah's Witnesses and compare and contrast some beliefs and teachings, but also to look at the ongoing legal disputes for the Jehovah's Witnesses and Scientology, because I'm not sure if anybody's been following any of the news around the world. The Jehovah's Witnesses are having a difficult time in Norway, and Scientology has recently been indicted by a grand jury. So there's a lot of stuff going on around the world, and there's not many places for people to hide right now because so many eyes are focused on these things with change, with bringing in legal ramifications like Japan has done for the Unification Church. If you don't know about that, you can find a deep dive episode on my YouTube channel. Um, so I'm really looking forward to that third panel with Chris and Stephen and Celine as well. I'm really keen. I haven't spoken to Celine yet, so I'm really looking forward to gaining Celine's perspectives and thoughts on the things that we discuss as well. CM says, about the family cult in San Francisco. How do I The mother has a strong attitude of ownership over other members of the family. The members play along and will participate in creepy, subtle acts of disrespect dictated by the mother. They are terrified of her. So, CM, when you say that the mother has a strong attitude of ownership over other members of the family, is this relational family, or is this family in the sense of we are family, like the children of God would say, the family? Um, I think that would help to look at this through a particular lens if we know about what we are looking at. And also, what are the stipulations of fear within the group? Because if your loved ones are terrified of the mother, there's a chance that there are consequences, or there are threats of consequences, at least, in terms of trying to enforce a type of allegiance from family members onto the matriarchal figure. So it would be helpful to know as well there are if there are consequences of or threats of consequences, and the types of fear tactics that are used within the group to create that kind of essence of people being scared. So please, if you feel comfortable sharing, please do continue. It's all secret and hidden to the outside. They display a happy function family while tearing lives apart in the dark. Um, very, very in keeping and typical with coercive and cult-like groups. it is kind of like, appearance is everything in some groups, and that can be extremely, extremely destructive. Um, Hi, Kimberly. Oh gosh, thank you so much for tuning in. I just love you so much. Love you so much, and I'm so thankful that you're here. 3 years today. The Cult Vault podcast wouldn't be here without you. So thank you so much. I just appreciate you with my whole heart. Kimberly is one of the most amazing, incredible people I've ever met. Such a strong woman who is like the most badass lawyer in the world. I'm convinced of it at this point. So sometimes if I have a question about American American law, I just email Kimberly and say, "Can you just explain this to me?" And she's like, "I'm not sure what you mean. I can't even word things in an email." Um, so that was the third panel. And the next panel is with Cherry and Morgan from Crimepedia. And interestingly, actually, CM, we're going to be talking about a family cult in America. I picked a Crimepedia episode last year at random to listen to before we went to CrimeCon. Um, and Shame or Exposure. They are dedicated for sure. That's an interesting one. I think it would be interesting to look at I mean, is there an element of public shaming? If there is a family gathering, would it be typical for the mother figure, the leader, to publicly shame a family member in front of everybody else in a very demeaning way, in a very embarrassing way? And when you say exposure, do you mean she has access to some confidential information that she might use in those public shamings where she has either had a one-to-one sit down with a family member who has confided in her and then she will threaten to, or she will then espouse that information in front of family members. Uh, this is just me kind of going off of generic things that we might see in cult like groups and high demand groups, but of course I could be way off the mark. So I apologize if that's the case. So Cherry and Morgan from Crimepedia are going to be Cherry's over in America right now. She's gone. She's left the UK. She's flown over to America. She did an Instagram live yesterday. From Hobby Lobby in America because she couldn't believe how amazing all of the things were. So she just did a live stream for everybody. um, Crimepedia is a true crime podcast. And what is really cool about Crimepedia, because of course there are so many true crime podcasts, the Cult Vault podcast is one of them, and everybody is trying to carve out their own space and their own unique slice of the of content creating. And what's really interesting about about Cherry and Morgan is that Cherry is based in the UK and Morgan is based in America. So each week one of the co-hosts will research and present a case to the other. So you get Morgan researching and delivering a case to Cherry, who then reacts in kind of, real time. And Cherry really enjoys um well, I don't know if enjoys. Cherry really finds it interesting to dive into cold cases that are decades old. So you will hear of some really obscure unsolved cold cases, or unsolved cases that have been closed for years and years. And I picked a show at random, an episode at random, and it was about a family that essentially is a trafficking ring. And I was listening to this episode, and it was a heartbreaking, horrific episode. And I thought to myself, wow, this really feels like it fits the kind of framework, whichever framework you choose to use. There's some amazing different frameworks by leading cult experts. I really encourage people to go and look at each leading expert and learn about the different frameworks that exist, because there's not just one or two, which I found out through doing this podcast. Um, and and then people started telling me about family cults, one-on-one cults, and I thought to myself, oh my goodness, Cherry and Morgan, it is what we thought it is. So I asked them to come onto the show and to retell that to us, which they will do. um and that will be the fourth panel talk interview. CM says, yes, they pick on each other like some kind of practice for when they fight the outside. Very us against them attitude. This way they all experience being the scapegoat, and they don't want that. Yes, yes. Beyond trauma bonds, they've become infused with one another. It's it's a really difficult one, that, CM. I've spoken to a number of individuals who have talked about how they haven't wanted, specifically in the troubled teen industry, this happens, and in a lot of talks that we've done around the Odyssey Study Group, which is a secret group that has functioned out of your part of America and Boston and New York. Um, although I should say San Francisco, I got in trouble the other day for someone emailed me to tell me that San Francisco and San Diego aren't down the road from one another. um, but a lot of the time in the troubled teen industry, individuals will, in order to save themselves from horrific abuse, place the spotlight onto other individuals to avoid themselves being put in that position. And it feels very much like what you're explaining here, CM. And interestingly, if you look if you look at Synanon, which is a huge part of the troubled teen industry's history, and the influence behind so many of these horrible programs that exist. Um, that did come around in that time, in that part of the world, in that part of America. It did. It's 60s and 70s. Charles E. Diedrich, Synanon in Santa Monica, I believe, on the beaches of Santa Monica. Um, There's a miracle on the beaches of Santa Monica, something along those lines. Someone correct me on the quote, that was in the papers talking about how great Synanon is. I wonder if the matriarchal figure had any involvement with a type of program like Synanon. It's very possible. Um, I'd be interested to know. I don't connecting those dots is the most rewarding thing. I'm not sure if anybody watched the episode with me and Molly Salins, and if anybody was able to connect the dots as well, but that was just like such a huge moment for me and my own education, which was just great. Um, Carol says this is such an interesting field. I agree with you, Carol. I do agree with you. It's new. There's something new every day, and it's certainly keeps you on your toes, um, to say the least. So, right, quickly back to the live stream. I'll just run through these. Yes. So Nicola Ranson is going to come and talk to us about recovering from Kimberly coming in to tell me San Francisco and San Diego are 500 miles apart. London to Paris and almost back to London. Yes, that does put it into that does put it into context a bit, doesn't it? I don't know. They're all in California, aren't they? So I just assume that they must be close by. I've anyway. The lengthy email has I'm dissuaded from saying that anymore. Um, uh, so I shan't. Nicola Ranson is going to be talking to us as a psychotherapist and as an individual who went to stay at the the Poon Ashram, and under Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh's leadership, she received a new name and a mala from Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh. She went to Oregon when everybody moved over to Oregon. So Nicola has been on the show before. She has a book coming out, A Slice of Orange, which I have read, which is amazing. I'm so excited for people to read it. It's amazing. It's so insightful, and it really encapsulates actually the the feeling of the 60s and 70s, and moving around, hitchhiking, and the dangers that young people put themselves in when they take part in these types of practices, um, and the scary world that, that you may encounter when you leave the safety of your family home, if your family home is somewhere that is safe, which of course is not the case for everybody. Um, Kimberly says, California, the third largest state in the United. She's like a little cheat sheet. California, the third largest state in the United States, measures 560 miles from west to east and 140 miles from north to south. Hmm. Should maybe. I mean, my geography is terrible, but could you fit? Wait, what did you say? 560 miles from west to east. Okay. So you couldn't fit the United Kingdom in that way. I don't know how, if from Land's End to John O'Groats, I don't know actually how many miles that is. Um, England, maybe you could fit in there. Thank you, Kimberly. I appreciate that. So Nicola is going to come and talk to us about those things, and then we're going to have a pub quiz. We're going to have a pub quiz in the middle of the stream. We're going to have we're going to have a general knowledge round. There's going to be a picture round. There's going to be a music round. I'm going to trust people not to Google things and cheat, because I still have faith in humanity. I especially have faith in the individuals who are tuning into this show. Um, so do, if you can, join us for the live stream. That is actually going to be, the quiz is going to be 7:45 p.m. Eastern time. So 12:45 midnight for me. So I'll probably have the energy drinks on the go at that point. Um, I'm part of a podcast chat and they're all chatting to each other, so I'm just going to tell them I'm live. Um, Hello. And that's going to be the pub quiz. So that's that. And then the next panel, which is really exciting, is with Teddy Hose and Hightower. So we're going to have people coming in to talk about extremism and radicalization, and I think that's going to be great. Katie Hightower is a an expert in Aum Shinrikyo. I've never spoken to an individual that is an expert in this field. I am so excited to hear from Katie, and she's donating some amazing things to the stream as well. Teddy Hose is like he's like a mascot for survivors that are recovering or leaving and recovering from the Unification Church. So I'm really, really looking forward to that particular panel. Verity says, when is the 12-hour podcast? The stream is going to be just like this one, Verity. It's going to be on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube on June the 2nd, from 6 p.m. British summertime to 6 a.m. So it will start at 1 p.m. Eastern Time America, and it will go on to 1 a.m. And I hope to see you there. It'd be great. It'd be great to see some more familiar faces. Hi, Andrew. So good to see. Thanks for tuning in. Andrew's one of the people in the group chat I just told everyone about. I said they're all messaging each other. I'm going to tell them I'm live. So that's the next panel. And then the panel after that is a nice segue into something else I wanted to talk about. So The second from last panel is with Micah Losh. Micah Losh is a former Jehovah's Witness who has written a memoir called Mentally Diseased. I have interviewed and released an episode on the Cult Vault podcast with Micah, but when I spoke with him, I hadn't had a chance to read all the way through his memoir, Mentally Diseased. Since then, I've had the opportunity to do that. So we're going to be talking at length about the importance of art in recovery. And I mean art in the broadest form. We could be talking about music, dance, drama, writing, journaling, podcasting, any form that your art takes. It could be the more traditional type of art, like Jen Kiaba's incredible artwork. I don't know if anybody's seen it, but if you haven't, oh, please go and look it up. It's amazing. So Micah is going to be coming on the show to talk about that. And he has also um, informed me that he will be donating to the giveaway a copy of Mentally Diseased, a copy of his next book, Gangrenous Speeches, which comes out on June 10th, and a copy of his third book, which is going to be a trilogy or a trinity, Despicable, which is coming out on the 10th of December. And here is a copy of Mentally Diseased. Look at this beautiful artwork. Have you seen this? There's Micah. There's young Micah. Once you read the book, you realize that it really is incredible artwork, but it's really very sad. The book opens from the perspective of young Micah, talking about the difficulties. Well, talking about a common interaction with a very devout mother within the Jehovah's Witnesses. I haven't read a book like this, which starts every chapter with a poem that Micah has written himself. So every chapter starts with a poem. I think it's amazing, and they're so powerful, and it's such a beautiful book, and I'm really looking forward to sharing that with everybody. And Micah's book is the monthly memoir giveaway book of the month. So if you find my Micah Losh posts on social media, which most of you have probably done, and you give the posts a like, a share, and a retweet or a comment, depending on if you're on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook, then you could be in with a chance of winning your own copy of Mentally Diseased. And it's incredible. Oh, yeah, yeah. My light, I have flipped it. You are right. Hi, Joe. Great to see you. Thank you for tuning in. You are right. The camera is flipped. So Micah's book is currently backwards. Good spot. So, yes, that's the second to last. And then the final panel is going to be with Whisper and Jemima of the Butterflies and Bravery podcast. And the panel for the final talk is going to be about building a life after leaving a cult. So, Whisper and Jemima were born and raised in the Children of God, as some of you may know if you've listened to my interview with those wonderful, wonderful women. And they both talk about leaving at different times with nothing and having to build, not rebuild, build a life from scratch. And we've heard this story so many times, tragically on the podcast, so many times. People leaving with just the clothes on their backs and talking about. I'm sure Micah talked about the same thing. We talked to individuals that left with the change in their pocket, the money, all the money they had in the world was the change in their pockets. Sometimes people left with no money at all. Other people talked about getting their ducks in a row. Is an ex Jehovah's Witness interview that sticks with me, is getting your ducks in a row as a piece of advice for people leaving high control groups. Meaning plan and prepare as much as you can for your departure from a group. But of course, that's not always possible because people don't always choose to walk away from groups. Sometimes they are disfellowshipped or shunned or kicked out or excommunicated. Um, so this subject, this field is so much more complicated and complex than just um, the things I thought made up these groups and the characteristics of individuals that reside inside of these groups. And it's wonderful to reflect on my own mindset and mentality from episode 1 3 years ago today, to where we are now. And I feel like I still have such a huge journey ahead of me in terms of understanding um, this field, which it's a bit daunting. It's a bit daunting. And some of you watching may have been on this journey as well from the beginning of the podcast up to now. Hundreds and hundreds of hours of listening to me go blah, 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 but also hundreds and hundreds of hours of really, really brave people coming forward to share their experiences. And it's every episode is just an education. Joe says some people not only leave with nothing, but are then saddled with illegal and unenforceable debts just for leaving. Yeah, much like Susan Dones talked about in our interview when she talked about leaving Nexium and then being left with all these debts and then taking Nexium to court and winning after representing herself, which is just one of my favorite things to have ever talked about with somebody. Is that moment is such an incredible thing to reflect back on. So yes, leaving with debt, leaving with um I think I don't know anybody that would leave a group and not have some form of sunk cost fallacy. So even if it's not a financial loss, the list of other things that can be lost from time within a destructive group is probably endless. I'm sure the list is endless. It's I think it's quite scary when you sit down and list the things that people have talked about losing um, as a from being involved or in a destructive and high control group. So that's the live stream. Oh, there's some amazing guests. I'm so excited to bring the panels and talks. And I keep saying I do this all the time when I'm thinking, and I know that I used to leave them in the earlier episodes, but I'm trying to get better at cutting them out now. So you may not hear me say as much. We have so many amazing prizes. Look at this. Look at this. I have the biggest collection of consoles, video games. I have so many comic books and graphic novels, but I don't get much time to really do much of that anymore. All of my spare time is spent working on the podcast. So I thought that it would be a great opportunity to share with some of the listeners some of my joys, hobbies, parts that make up me, that have been a part of me for as long as I can remember. Oh gosh, I cannot remember a time without video games, and other geeky things, or nerdy things, or whatever words people might use to describe them. Downstairs we have cabinets full of PlayStations and Wii's, Nintendo 64s, Mega Drives. I think the Mega Drive is the oldest console down there. Um, but there's GameCubes, there's dance mats for the PS1. Oh, there's all sorts of awesome stuff down there. Buzz the Music Quiz with the controllers. There's just so much stuff. But it's all behind perspex, baby-proofed, and we haven't pulled any of it out for ages. Plus, my partner has a Raspberry Pi, so it's like an emulator that has all of the consoles and games for those consoles. So it seems a bit pointless to get all the wires out and all of that. So some of the things I'm going to be sharing, these things are all up for grabs in the 12-hour live stream. This is my mini Donkey Kong game. Some incredible artworks. Look at these things. Show me what you got. Look at this. Look at this Groot. Oh gosh, just so many amazing things. Sonic music, yeah. Bring. That's all the rings. Bring. Thank you for helping X Cult members. Thank you for being here in the stream and for saying that. I appreciate it. Thank you. We've got, look at these. I have so many signed Sean Atwood books. Hard Time by Sean Atwood. It is all reversed, so I do apologize. So we have those. Ah, I have copies of The Serpent Rising by Mary Mahoney. Oh, this book. This is her. This is Mary on the front with Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh. And this is Mary's story about visiting several different ashrams in India and other things. It's about much more than that. And Mary's story is, I mean, I haven't released it yet, but it's, gosh, it's something. I actually had to take a break from the podcast for a few days after this interview. So I will have to put out a warning for people to exercise extreme caution. Verity says, I began following you after seeing you on Atwood. Ah, Atwood Unleashed. I appreciate that, Verity. That happened just after CrimeCon. Sean gave me these books at CrimeCon, and I'm gonna put them in the raffle for the giveaway, which you can donate to right now. Everybody can donate. There's a little QR code at the bottom. And anybody that donates, and patrons as well, patrons I have added in just to say, thank you. They get free entries into the raffle, but you can have as many entries into the raffle as you want. You can use your patron status, or you can donate, and every time you donate, you will get your name entered into the draw. So up for grabs are all of these things that I'm showing everybody now. We've got these books. Joseph Flatley, he sent me some of his books. New Age Grifter, Gabriel of Urantia. I don't know if anybody's read these books, but somebody on cults, r/cults on Reddit the other day was asking for copies of this book, saying it was really expensive to buy. Joseph was nice enough to send me a number of copies. So all of these books I have duplicates of. I also am keeping a copy of, with all of my other amazing memoirs and books. So I will make sure that I keep a copy for myself. We have from Alex Stain. Alexandra Stain sent these to me in the post the other day. This is a first edition copy of Terror, Love and Brainwashing. Look at this hardback. This is beautiful. Look at this. I mean, I'm sorry that it's backwards. Secrets and Lies, Ideology and Language in Totalist Systems. It's an incredible book, amazing resource. And this is a first edition. So super rare, super special. And then we have 2 second edition paperbacks of the same book. Look at that artwork. So I'm super excited to share that with everybody. Look, on the back, there's an endorsement from Yanya Lalit, who also has donated a copy of each of her 3 books, Unbounded Choice, Escaping Utopia, and Take Back Your Life. So Yanya will be sending out those books directly to the winners from her house to yours. Joe says, with the front covers backwards, my brain keeps thinking it's a book in Arabic. Whoops. Nope, sorry, just me, because of my light. And then I've got other things I'm throwing in. This is Moon Cop. Oh, one of my favorite graphic novels. Look at this. I can't explain to you, like, I have an extra copy of this downstairs, and, I I I met the author at a convention one time who was sitting at his exhibition table just doodling away, and I just went past, and I, just kinda said, "What do you do?" And he said, "I'm Tom Gould, this is what I do." And he showed me some, um, kind of excerpts of his upcoming graphic novel, Mooncop. And it wasn't out for a few months, so as soon as it came out, I got a copy, and then someone got me a copy for my birthday, but I just love it. It's a great story, but it's so sad as well. It makes you appreciate things, but it makes you feel quite lonely as well. Anyway, you can imagine a moon on a cop on the moon. Uh, there's me reading things backwards now, Joe. So there's that as well, which is gonna be entered into the raffle. And then a few other things that are going to be entered into the raffle, copies of all 3 of Micah Losh's books. There's this. Have you seen this? Puzzle Ninja? Does this sort of thing interest you? There's so many different things in there, and it's such a beautiful book. Look at this. I kind of really like this. There's things on how you do things, how you solve things, examples on oh man, it's such a solid, great book. Over 200 Japanese puzzles that will flex, stretch, and blow your mind. Can you beat the puzzle masters to become a puzzle ninja? So that's going to be included as well. We have our wooden 3D puzzle of R2D2 that's going to be added into the raffle. And we have my own signed photo of Chris Pratt as Star-Lord. It comes with the, can you see it? It comes with the, proof, the, little certificate of authenticity as well, which is in the back of the frame. So that's my own little, I have so much stuff that's it just doesn't it sits in a place where it doesn't get the attention and the love and appreciation that, I either once had for it or that it deserves. So there's so much more stuff that's gonna be added into the raffle. This is just some of the stuff that I've brought up today. And there's going to be with every, parcel or package that I send out, I'm going to be including Cult Vault swag, which is, key rings, stickers, bookmarks, fridge magnets, badges. Did I say badges? Badges, key rings, fridge magnets, bookmarks, stickers, business cards, um, and a personalized note from me. And then sometimes also, if my children are around, I might ask them to help me add a little extra personalization to each note, which is always nice. So, those are also going to be things that are included in the raffle. So, that's the whole podcast subreddit. That's the 12-hour live stream. And I've talked a little bit about Patreon, so I will just tell everybody about that. Some of you here are patrons. You can support the show on patreon.com/the cult vault for as little as £1 a month. And that gets people early access to ad-free full-length episodes. So instead of waiting for part 1, part 2, part 3, you'll get one full-length audio file that you can just listen to all the way through with no ads, no breaks, no nothing. And that's £1 a month. And you have the option to pay for the year. So you could pay £12 and that will get you full-length episodes every Friday. Uh, and then if you go up the tiers, there are extra perks. So £5 a month gets individuals access to exclusive monthly deep dives on an infamous cult. At the moment, I'm researching, I'm scripting an episode on the true Russian Orthodox Church, which is wild. And this this allows me to do the podcast in the style that I originally did the show, in a researched deep dive way, with me talking about infamous cults from history. And I do enjoy that format, and this is a way to keep that going for people that prefer the more scripted way of communicating. But the interviews are, they are the forefront of the podcast now, the mission of the show. So I wouldn't change that. So I'm just trying to, like, how can we incorporate everything? And then I wanted to tell everybody about CrimeCon. So I don't know how many people are UK based, but I wanted to talk about my experiences of CrimeCon. Um, oh, I have my little, I was going to say cheers. Here's my little, I think it might be flat now. My glass of Prosecco to say happy birthday to the Cult Vault, which was an hour and 11 minutes ago that I did that. Cheers. So, my experiences of CrimeCon, I wanted to really try and paint the picture for everybody, for anyone who's thinking of coming along. So, last year, I got on the train with my partner from Liverpool to London, and I had my hair in pin curls. Most people might know what pin curls are. You have your hair rolled up and it's pinned in. It's very scouse. And I got on the train with my pin curls in, and I got to the hotel with my pin curls in, and somebody said, "Hello, Casey," and I was shocked. I had absolutely no idea who it was, and it was Sally from True Crime Investigators UK. And Sally and John, they host a show together. They are a married couple. They are both retired from the police force, and they offer some amazing insight into their experiences. And their podcast is really interesting, and they have a great dynamic, just like Cherry and Morgan from Crimepedia, who have that kind of English to American, present different cases each week to each other. They have a really good dynamic, Sally and John. And I was really surprised. So already I felt really welcome. And then I went up to my room, and I got my pin curls out, and I went down and I joined everybody. Everybody was really friendly, and it's it's strange. You feel kind of, like, "Oh, how do I navigate this at first?" Like, it's a new experience, and I feel like everybody feels that way. But then as you become familiar with people, I think it's easier to talk about the common interests of content creation, true crime, and everything else. There were some amazing discussions taking place about advocacy, cold cases, progressions in the field. And when I talk about the discussions that take place, it's it's incredible, because you're not just having conversations with individuals who have opinions and ideas about things. You're talking about people that have lived experience. I was just having a beer with Colin Sutton in the bar, and he was telling me about how much everything has changed in the field, and how different his job would be now if he was still a senior investigating officer for the Metropolitan Police. So Colin Sutton is a prominent figure in the true crime community, and also in the Metropolitan Police community. And it was amazing to be able to just stand there and have a conversation with somebody who typically you might think, oh, if I go and watch a live show by somebody that is, doing some type of talk, I might just pay to go to the talk, and that's it. But at CrimeCon, it's that barrier doesn't exist. You go to this event, you watch people do live talks, you watch people do panels, you do book signings and Q&As, and it's all very much business, networking during the day. And then during the evenings, it's just so casual and laid back. Everybody is talking about their highlights from the day, talking about things they're looking forward to seeing the next day, asking people, "Oh, have you heard of this? What do you know about that?" Or it's a conversation of, "I really enjoyed this work you do. What do you think about this?" And I had one of those experiences myself when I went to CrimeCon in Scotland, and I talked to Colin Sutton about a British serial killer that he caught named Levi Belfield. And we talked about the personality of Belfield and some of the abuses that he would inflict on his many former partners. And now things may things may have played out differently in today's age because coercive control laws didn't exist at the time that Levi Belfield was abusing these women. And we had a really, really interesting discussion. And I don't know how to explain the crossover of professional experiences, but it was really incredible. And Colin was so open to listening to my thoughts and theories. And this happens with everybody. If you see a guest speaker on the list that you're interested in speaking with, there's a chance that they will be in the bar with everybody else at the end of the day, just kind of just chatting away with everybody. It's such a special experience, and I really enjoy it. So, that's my pitch. That's my sales pitch. Yay! I'm doing it. It's weird. Oh, Joe, thank you so much. Super chat. Joe gets a special shout out. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I really appreciate that, Joe. Thank you, truly. Um, I have such a huge appreciation for everybody that allows this work to continue because this is my full-time job, and as many of you know, I have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, and the choice is either to continue monetizing the podcast with ads and asking people to help me fundraise, or going to get a part-time job and doing less of this work. And I will do so much fundraising before before I do that. So everything that comes to the podcast, I appreciate so much. Thank you. Um pin curls. Pin curls, Joe. You know when you get your hair curled up, they used to put them in those like those little, oh come on, what are they called? Curlers. And they'd get stuck in your hair and it'd be like having glue in your hair. You'd roll it up and then you leave them in overnight or you leave them in for a few hours, and then when you take them out, your hair's all beautiful and curly. Pin curls is like, oh, I must have one around here because oh, here you go. These little clips, you clip them in with kind of like the plastic curlers, but you roll your hair up in the same way, and then you pin it in with these 2 things, and it does the same thing. So you blow dry it, you blow dry the curl. I don't, the hairdresser does because I am useless with my hair, as most of you have probably seen. Um, so, that's pin curls, everybody, that's not sure. I just thought everybody might know, but, um, that's just me assuming because I wouldn't have known, unless the hairdresser says, "Do you want pin curls?" I'm like, "What's pin curls?" Um, so that's CrimeCon, and it's going to be in 3 weeks today. I'm gonna be standing in the bar with some of you that are in this chat, and it's gonna be amazing, and I really can't wait. Cherry and Morgan will be there. Oh, Kathy, hi, watching you here in Spain. Good luck with the 12-hour live stream. Thank you, Kathy. I hope that the weather's great and you're having a great time and that you have the beach to yourself, as you typically do around this time of year. So for anybody that's thinking about coming to CrimeCon, I'd just love to see you there. That would be amazing. I would just love the opportunity to be like, "Oh my goodness." When I went to CrimeCon in Scotland in September, I was just standing in the bar talking. I think I was just talking to Cherry, and somebody turned around and went, "Oh my goodness." And I just kind of looked at this person like, "Oh no, what have I said? What have I done?" She said, "You're Casey. I recognize your voice." And it was the maddest moment. I can't explain to you. It was just the strangest thing. I want to have these discussions with people face to face. I want to be able to talk to individuals that have thoughts, ideas, opinions, experiences, like CM. We were talking before about this family call. I'd love to have that conversation in person. I'd love to sit and chat over food and beers or water and coffee or fruit juice or whatever, and really break these things down in person. I haven't had the opportunity to do that yet, and I really think it could be quite powerful. So anybody that's thinking of coming to CrimeCon in 3 weeks in London, I'll be there. There'll be a number of other people there that are fans and listeners of the podcast. And if you go to crimecon.co.uk, you can see the whole list of guests that will be going. You can see the whole lineup, the timetable, and the way that things are going to be happening and taking place. And if you use the code CULT at the checkout, you will get 10% off. And I know all of you have heard me say that a million times at this point, but um, as content creators, we attend the event for free. We don't pay for our event tickets, but we do pay for our transport. We pay for our merchandise that we give away for free. We pay for our hotel stay, and a London Leonardo Royal Hotel is quite expensive. So what happens is, if we manage to sell a certain amount of tickets, we do get some of our time reimbursed, some of our hotel expenditure reimbursed, and that would be really handy because, as I mentioned, this is a full-time job for me. So every little helps. So anybody that's thinking of coming, we'll have an amazing time. We'll sit down together. We'll talk about everything, and it will also help my stay at CrimeCon as well. But I'm going either way. I'm going either way. So even if people will come to the hotel later in the night and they're not attending the CrimeCon event, we will be there. If you're in London, drop in and say hi. Just like Leanne has. Hi, Leanne. Oh, so good to see it. Thank you for dropping in. I appreciate you, Leanne. Did you know this is the third birthday of the Cult Vault podcast today? 3 years ago, I released my very first episode, and I think, Leanne, that you might be one of the very first listeners that reached out to tell me I listened to your show. I'm not sure if that's true, but I am so certain that you've been here almost from the start. Especially as a patron. I think as soon as I set my Patreon up, you were there. So I appreciate you so much. Thank you. Um, I wish that you could be in London as well. I imagine you'd pop off to the theatre though. You'd be like, okay, bye, CrimeCon, just going to watch a show. Um, and I'd love that. I'd love that as well. I think that would be a great time. Um, so thank you. I do think that you yes, one of the first. It's it's not the Excel Centre. No, I did go there once for a Comic Con, but this is a crime con. It's at Joe, it's at the London at Tower Bridge, the Royal Leonardo Hotel and Spa at Tower Bridge. Last year we were at St Paul's, which was interesting because the room was really warm. So I opened the window, and then 5 a.m. it was like bing bang, bing bong, the massive cathedral. um, Verity says bobby pins were used to make pin curls, but I remember the rollers you mentioned. I don't mind the foam ones, but my hair is as straight as yours. Yeah, and it's warm today. So look at this frizz. Also, somebody said to me the other day, "Are you going to get your hair cut? Because you look like one of those religious women that doesn't get their hair cut." And I don't think this person knows about the work that they know I do a podcast, but they don't listen to the show, and I don't think they know what the show is about. And I kind of thought that that was a striking thing to say to somebody, and I don't think I would have before this show. Um, Yes, I would love that, Leanne. You would go off to the theatre and you'd have a great time. Also, I was gonna message you today on Instagram because you asked me months ago if I'd heard about the cat cult and if I was gonna do an episode, and that episode came out today, yesterday, today, sometime this week for patrons on Wednesday. And I was gonna ask if you'd had a chance to listen to it and what your thoughts were. So thank you to Desi for that interview. Really, a lot of people had requested that one, which I thought was quite a niche and obscure request. And I love being able to do that. Check that box off when people say, "Can you do an episode on this?" I'm like, "Yes, yes, I can." There you go. Um, Sorry, I've got such bad hay fever and I don't have a tissue, so I'm like doing what my children do and I tell them off for. Um, Oh, Verity, I love that. Oh, I love my hair long and I grow it for myself. Do you know what? I had to get mine cut the other day though, because I sat down to go to the toilet and I like pulled my head back and I thought this is kind of, this is the point where you say to yourself, I probably need to get my hair cut. And trying to turn over in bed is like you're just great, Leanne, that's awesome. Let me know what you think because the cat cult episode is out. And there's a great part before the Eve is Eden stuff about Freedom Fire Ministries as well, which is led by the same woman. So that's CrimeCon. It's going to be in 3 weeks' time. It's going to be in London at Leonardo. At the Leonardo Royal Hotel and Spa. They have a pool. They have a pool. That's what you like. Swimming pool, fitness gym. I might join you in the gym in the morning. And then on the Saturday, so in 3 weeks' time, by this point, I would have finished this. There will be a live talk between myself and John Atack. So, for anybody that doesn't know, John Atack is an expert in authoritarianism. Um, and I don't want to say coercive control because he would tell me that that's not the term that he would use for his work. And he is a Scientologist historian. I think he is either the only one or the first Scientologist historian. And we're going to be talking about his in-depth book, A Piece of Blue Sky, and then the updated version, Let's Sell Them a Piece of Blue Sky, which is a comprehensive look at Scientology and the history of Scientology. And then John will also be doing book signings, and I'm going to be throwing in Cult Vault bookmarks, and we're just going to be having a collaborative all-round good time. Don't lock you in the sauna and force feed you vitamins. Yeah, no, I hope not. The Scientology building is just around the corner from the St. Paul's Hotel that we were at last year, though, and I didn't know that until just as we were leaving. The buildings basically touch, and there was a sign out the front saying free personality tests. And Cherry from Crimepedia said we should go in and take a free personality test. And I just said, don't ever do that. And she was like, why not? We should go in undercover. And I said, no, let's never do that ever, please. And she was like, but we could learn. We could learn. I said, we don't need to. We don't need to learn. And then we were walking to the train station and she said, you need to tell me why. And I said, we just don't have enough time between here and the train station for me to tell you why that's never a good idea. Right. So I'm going to play you 2 clips, which you might have seen of myself and John Atack talking about what you can expect if you go to CrimeCon. So let me just try and load these up. Hi, I'm Casey from the Cult Vault podcast.
And I'm John Atack.
You can find John and I speaking with one another at CrimeCon on June the 10th at the Leonardo Royal Hotel at London Bridge. The things that we'll be discussing include this.
After I'd left Scientology, I was followed not simply by Scientologists, but by private detectives, which was quite scary in the US because they had guns, and told me that they had 4 people in my private life who were reporting on me. I think I'm named in 10 court cases. I've seen people come apart from just one.
I couldn't be more excited to bring our talk to the guests of CrimeCon on June 10th in London, where you can grab yourselves a copy of this book by John Atack and grab a couple exclusive Cult Vault bookmarks. So we will see you there.
Yeah, and if you bring your books along, I'll sign them for free.
Okay, and this is the second clip of what you can expect if you come to CrimeCon to watch my live talk with John Atack.
We're at CrimeCon, so we're looking at the criminal idea, and one of the things off at the edge of my work after I worked with Scientology was looking at how gangs and terrorist groups function, and I've spoken at conferences on terrorism as well, because fundamentally you're dealing with a very similar mindset, a fanatical, fervent mindset where people pretty much do as they're told. An authoritarian setting where somebody's in charge and you have to do as you're told. The difference is the degree of violence.
I couldn't be more excited to bring our talk to the guests of CrimeCon on June 10th in London, where you can grab yourselves a copy of this book by John Atack and grab a couple exclusive Cult Vault bookmarks. So we will see you there.
Yeah, and if you bring your books along, I'll sign them for free.
Way, that's gonna be me and John. I've also got some leaflets of John's that I'll be printing out and bringing along, which has some information on how to protect ourselves against potential predators. And I will have a whole table at the event where I will have fridge magnets and key rings and all sorts of things to give away to people that come past and say hello. And that would be I would just be amazing. It would just be amazing to say hello to people in person after all this time and lockdown and having babies and doing the podcast virtually with people around the world. It would be awesome. So let's go back to the chat. Um oh yes, yes, Verity. There's so much Scientology content on the internet right now. So many different channels and things. I went into Verity, you might have been there actually. I tuned into Doug Kramer's Dazed But Not Confused live stream the other night. Usually it's a little bit too late for me, but I was actually finished doing work at the time that one of Doug's streams started. So I dropped in, and it was really nice to see a lot of regular commenters on my YouTube videos in that live stream. And what I really like about Doug's content is that he will break down terminology and phrases that people might not be aware of what they mean. So if somebody is, say for example, he's talking about auditing, he would explain what auditing is and how the process works and what the equipment is like, instead of just saying, you know, I went in for a session of auditing. Of course, I'm not going to attempt to break down what auditing is right now. I'll just do this and say, this is me having my lie detector test, and hope for a former Scientologist to jump in and um and help me out with that. So if anybody is looking for some Scientology related content, I do recommend Doug Kramer's Days But Not Confused. And also, if you are following the Danny Masterson retrial, or if you're interested in sort of it's like a compilation of media coming out of the world of former Scientologists, you can check out Tony Ortega's work as well. There's lots of different things. It's not just Tony Ortega is the pool reporter for the Danny Masterson retrial case. Danny Masterson is a lifelong Scientologist who has been accused of the forcible rape of 3 women between 2001 and 2003. And as that case is ongoing, as that trial is ongoing, the jury deliberations, they ended the third day of deliberations yesterday. Tony Ortega is the pool reporter for the Danny Masterson retrial, but also Tony Ortega at the Underground Bunker has been reporting on Scientology for over a decade. So there's a whole library of interviews, articles, information, documents, all sorts of things that you can check out from Tony Ortega's work. Going to be a great podcast that I had listed it in my calendar. You're right, Ajuko, perfectly timed with the Masterson trial. I'm sure we'll be having some interesting conversations about that at CrimeCon. I'm looking at the map, and also just down the road from the event is the Royal College of Psychologists, their arch enemy. Yeah, and I feel like people pick certain retail on purpose. It would be interesting to know which came first, because I was doing some cult news today about Kanye West, and he's like starting his own brand, but he's like picked an office that's opposite Adidas or something like that. I can't remember off the top of my head. I didn't include it in the news, but it was just something I was reading. If you wanted to include everything about Kanye West in the news, you'd have to do a whole podcast on Kanye West. And there's so many other things that are being talked about on the Cult News podcast that I now have. CM says, "Fair game is for real. It goes on forever, like the psychopaths hell they create." Yeah, John Atack's is going to talk about his experiences of being fair gamed, the harassment that he endured at the hands of Scientology after he left and decided to speak out. And I think it's going to be really powerful stuff. And I think what's going to be really powerful is how John ties his experiences and knowledge of Scientology to environments and groups that exist today all around us. So I would I hope that we'll get copies of the recordings, so anybody that can't come to the session can watch it back, or at least listen to it back. Tony is great on Scientology and also has a channel on here too. Yes, so if anybody wants to check out, John Atack's channel, I'll post a link to that now in the live stream. Joe says, "Have you heard?" This is interesting. "Have you heard about the Kanye West school? So many utterly bizarre rules." I have heard about it, Joe. The Donda Academy. Kanye West has a school called the Donda Academy, which he started, which is a Christian-based school, which he named after his mother, Donda, and is currently undergoing several different lawsuits for different reasons. Some of those lawsuits have come from staff who, or former staff, ex-staff, who are claiming wrongful dismissal. And some of the lawsuits are coming from other disgruntled individuals who have left and began speaking out about some of the horrific treatment that the kids are subjected to in the Donda Academy, allegedly. So if you want to check out information on Kanye West and the Donda Academy, I have just done an update episode that will be coming out on Monday in the cult news segment. But until then, I will just find the episode and post it in the chat for anybody that wants to go and have a look at the overview of the Kanye West saga. And it's a list of controversies linked to Kanye West as well. He, as many of you know, there was sort of a downward spiral over the last few years, and he is now disgraced for espousing anti-Semitic hate speech and just awful things that I just no wonder he's been dropped by every contract uh, and publicist and agent and wife and whoever else. Leaders of highly controlled CM says leaders of highly controlled groups can be described as paranoid monster toddlers, their thoughts being reality and everyone else is delusional. Leaders of highly controlled groups can be described as paranoid monster toddlers. I've never heard that phrase before. I think it's interesting. I think what's interesting about that phrase is that often leaders and leadership will try to infantilize members so that their dependency on leadership grows. So the toddler aspect in the reversed roles, I would definitely see being applied there. Their thoughts being reality and everyone else is delusional. Everyone else outside of the group is you certainly can see that in a lot of groups. I'm seeing that now in the true Russian Orthodox Church that I'm researching. But in groups like the Order of the Solar Temple, the discussions on record between the two leaders, Luc Jouret and Joseph de Mombro, they knew their game was up. They knew they were about to be found out for all of the crimes they'd committed and all of the horrible things that they had done, false teachings that they'd put onto their followers. And they decided that they were going to do what the Branch Davidians did, and kill all of their followers using the inner circle members to carry out those crimes. It's a really, really tragic story, the Order of the Solar Temple. Um, I wouldn't even recommend going to look it up, to be honest. Just enjoy your weekend, and then we understand we have to take historical lessons from certain things to avoid them from happening again. But as Elgin Strait says, we don't need to soak in other people's trauma porn. So that's important to remember as well. Kathy Poulton says, for a while, Kanye had a lot of people fooled. Well, there was a big talk. I think it may have been when he was, I can't remember which talk it was. He talked about coming off of his medication um, around about the time he talks about bipolar disorder and talks about coming off of his medication. But that his Then he starts to talk about how people had him sedated and put on to medication against his will and that he didn't need the medication. So it's really difficult because we're just people looking at Kanye West and making our own assumptions, but I suppose we don't really know him and his medical conditions. Um, but and this is the thing, right? I still don't think that that excuses anti-Semitic hate speech. People might say, "Oh, but he's bipolar." I don't think there's anything that can excuse that. Um, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, please, people, tell me if you think I'm wrong. I would love to have a discussion about it because I don't know. Maybe there still needs to be compassion and sensitivity there, but then are we are we are we complicit in racism? It's Is it a moral and ethical dilemma that I'm having right now in person on air? um, Let me know your thoughts. Actually, I did talk about this in a cult news segment coming out sometime this week about a middle school student who got his teacher suspended when the class were told to do a history assignment. They talk about a prominent figure from history and they come dressed up as that figure from history. And one of the teacher's middle school students came dressed as the Grand Wizard from the Ku Klux Klan in a in a white um in a white costume depicting the leader of the KKK. People apparently are divided on that, saying that this is a prominent figure from history and we shouldn't forget things that happened. But also other people are saying this shouldn't be allowed ever, let alone in schools. So anybody that tunes into the cult news will hear me say, what are your thoughts on that? I don't offer an opinion in the cult news episode. CM says they are the center of the universe. Toddlers have not learned different yet. Cult leaders never will. Yeah, true. Um, True, especially when you consider cult leaders that are arrested, charged, and imprisoned, but still lead their group from behind bars. Although I would argue that there are a number of cult leaders who don't have that ability or influence once they are arrested. I was going to name a couple of other cult leaders for people to go and check out. Oh, but I don't even know. Just never, yeah. I was going to talk about Rock Terrio of the Anthill Kids, but I don't, again, on the weekend, think people need to know about that. Verity says, I don't feel any diagnosis other than insanity, which can also be questionable as an excuse for anything. Meds can cause insanity, but that's a whole other topic. Agreed. Agreed. And there are complexities with certain mental health diagnoses that I certainly don't understand or can talk about. And and I wouldn't want to armchair diagnose. I'm going from Kim Kardashian did an interview on the difficulties of being married to an individual with bipolar disorder. Um, and then Kanye West talked about his medication, and how he didn't need to be medicated to begin with, and they held him down in a hospital, and um, I I'm not sure. People would have to go and look into that a bit more. Um, Carol says narcissists and sociopaths. I don't know. It's just Kanye West is like a whole enigma, like a very strange one. Where was I up to? I was talking about CrimeCon. I showed you the John Atack videos. Really excited for CrimeCon. Um, Also, the way one is raised is no excuse. to continue any kind of abuse. No, I think educating ourselves, taking accountability is a really good thing. Um, I did an episode for the news which comes out this week that talks about how there are great waves being made in historical and ongoing cases of abuse being highlighted, and legal action being taken. There's still such a long way to go. And I don't know what I mean by that because I don't know what the answer is. Is it education in schools around coercive control, stalking, harassment, exploitation? Is it? I don't know. I don't know if that's the answer. Maybe it's part of it. But anyway, that's a whole of it. That was just a train of thought that I had. So for anyone tuning in, I just wanted to remind everybody that less fear, more love. Yes, wouldn't that be great? And also just governments that aren't corrupt would be awesome. I mean, if you're looking at Trump and Boris Johnson, and potentially even Nicola Sturgeon at this point, like who thought? Um, oh gosh, just I mean, Vladimir Putin, and I know that when you look at democracy, you wouldn't necessarily include that name in there, but still, like corruption within government, and then you wonder why people are angry, and you wonder why people just, and then it's a whole other thing, isn't it? And I don't want to turn this political. So, CrimeCon is happening in 3 weeks. For anyone tuning in now, it is 3 years today since I released my very first episode of the Cult Vault podcast. Um, Carol saying sturgeon. Carol, isn't that your neck of the woods? Oh, Verity. Oh, thank you, Verity. Verity is just signed up for Patreon. Thank you for becoming my newest patron on Patreon, Verity. I appreciate that. That's awesome. Thank you. I will also give you a shout out, Verity, in next week's episode, which will be my 250th episode. And if you've come here from the Sean Atwood channel, you might recognize next week's guest because I am going to be releasing my interview with John Sutton, who talks about what are they called? Tales from the jails. um Verity says, well, CM says less fear, more love. They are all playing roles. Life is a game, and we are their objects to play with. Yeah, I mean, until we move away from that and become empowered through education and support and recovery, and then that plaything doesn't exist anymore. Uh, wow, Casey, that opens a few doors of thoughts for me. Parents are probably the number one abusers. So are they going to teach their kids? Schools, Christian schools, society? I have no idea. I know, Verity, and it's really difficult because then you look at the homeschool phenomenon, and that's a whole other thing as well. Joe says, congratulations on episode 250. Wild. Like, oh my goodness. 250 episodes. What? And Verity says, you're welcome, Casey. I love you and appreciate everything you do. I feel much better informed about cults and can relate it to my childhood. That just that warms my heart. Thank you. Thank you for saying that, Verity. I'm so glad that this content can be helpful. More than anything. More than anything, I'm truly happy that this content can be useful, and people's stories are so powerful and educational. It's incredible. Every single episode is, and I'm trying to put everything into a book, but I don't know how you do that. I just it's too tough because there's so much goodness in everybody's uh, respective experiences, that you don't want to miss out. Goodness from the individual's retrospection and education, not goodness from the groups that they're involved in, of course. But it's also important to remember that not a 100% of people's experiences will be bad, which is something I've had to learn in this journey. Carol says narcissists lack self awareness. Everyone else is wrong in their head. And then Verity says, Idolatry is huge, and while I feel sad when I hear someone I've seen on the screen or heard their music yeah, and I think that's a big thing. I had a discussion with somebody, maybe some of you have seen it if you're tuning in from YouTube, had a conversation with somebody the other day who was defending the Backstreet Boys member Nick Carter, who has been alleged of assaulting numerous women. And this person said, "Oh, it must be very stressful for Nick Carter being on tour when he has this hanging over his head." And my response was, I imagine it is, but also I imagine that it is stressful for individuals who are accusing Nick Carter of abuse if they are individuals living with those experiences. So that was something. And and one of the alleged victims has sued Nick Carter, and in response to that, Nick Carter has put in a countersuit. Maybe some of you saw this in my Cult News episode, and this person's response was, "Well, if he's been allowed to countersue the original lawsuit, does that mean he's done nothing wrong? Of course it doesn't." So I went to Kimberly, who you might have seen in this chat earlier, and I said to Kimberly, "Kimberly, can you help me explain why that's not right?" Which she did. She wrote me a very informative and detailed, lengthy email with her legal expertise and told me why that's not the case. And I put it in a comment to this individual who still came back to me and said, "But he's on tour and this must be really stressful." So, I think you're right, Verity. I think there's a very important role that we play as individuals in not listening to music by R. Kelly, of not going to watch the new Top Gun film because Tom Cruise is in that film, and the money that we raise for Tom Cruise is going to go towards Scientology, um, or at least the pockets of Scientology's most um, revered figure. So it's an interesting one, and it's also difficult because I have a list of around 30 or so individuals that have been accused of certain things, which would mean that, you can't watch your childhood favorite films and listen to your most amazing favorite band's artist music. Um, and I sit here every day reading news articles like, please don't let this film or this person, because you just don't know. And of course, individuals must speak out and seek justice when they are ready. But the fact that people are taking back their power and using their voices should give pause to perpetrators and abusers to second guess their decision making. Like, should I be doing this? Like, at least if there are consequences and ramifications and cancellations of people's career in the entertainment industry, people may think twice. That shouldn't be the way things people should not behave in that way to begin with. But the law should deter people from committing those crimes if they would have done so anyway. So hopefully people coming forward and doing that will do that. But it's, people are, "Oh, but R. Kelly wouldn't do that," and as Kimberly said to me the other day, the first jury, like, threw the case out or acquitted him. And, like, after seeing him in a tape with a 14-year-old girl. So it happens. It happens. And one of the most abused victims of R. Kelly's, a young girl who was skipping school to go to the courthouse in support of R. Kelly, and he left the courthouse and picked this young vulnerable girl out of the crowd at the courthouse and took her back to his studio to groom her. It's unfathomable. But when you tell people that they can get away with these things over and over and over, I mean, I guess that's where the confidence comes from. Um, so there's a bit of a discussion about that. We've gone a bit off track, but I don't mind. What bothers me the most is people who continue to participate in religions who cause atrocities to men, women, and children. We know who most of them are, and I don't get why people don't walk away. I know it's very difficult, Verity, isn't it? I think that why don't you just leave question is something that a lot of people ask, but after speaking with individuals who talk about the difficulties of leaving a group, whether it's financial stability or the shunning that they will experience from everybody they've ever known, not having anywhere to live, not having anything to eat or drink, um, leaving behind your children, your parents. It's so much more intrinsic and difficult and complex than an individual just saying, "Oh, I don't know about this. I'm going to leave." And that's the thing. If somebody says to me, "Do you think such and such is a cult?" I always say to them, "How easy is it to walk away?" Because if you can't just say, "Oh, do you know what? This isn't right for me. I'm gonna find a different Pilates class, or I'm gonna find a different yoga class, or I'm gonna find a different book reading club." If you can't do that, if you can't say, "Oh, do you know what? I'm gonna move my Patreon pledge to a different podcast. I'm gonna say, like, thank you to the Cult Vault for all of the content you've given. Now I'm gonna head over to the Truth That Heals podcast and become a patron of theirs instead." Um, y- you should be able to just do that, you know? You should be able to just make that decision and leave a group in that way. So this is one of the things that I've had to really educate myself on because I'm not an individual that has experienced a cultic group. Um, so that's been something that I've thought about a lot. Um, so just to round up today before we finish, because we are hitting the 2 hour mark, even though on June the 2nd it will be 12 hours. These are some of the things that we've talked about today. The Cult Vault podcast, 3 years old today, released my first episode 3 years ago on this very day, and we are 249 episodes in. And also an extra 40 or so exclusive episodes on Patreon, which aren't available to the public. And we've also done 60 or so cult news episodes, with those coming out daily on YouTube and my Cult Watch podcast, which you can find on all podcast players today. We've talked a little bit about the Cult Podcasts subreddit, which is linked in the chat, which you can find, where you can go and check out posts that are made daily of all different cult podcast episodes and information, which is cool. Truly appreciate all of the help that Juco does in not only supporting the podcast and promoting the podcast and everything that I put on Twitter and everything, but also everybody else's work. There's just such a great devotion to each person's content that a Juco gives, and that's great. And by Juco, I mean not the Tony Quinn of Juco, but the person that is making huge efforts to expose that particular version. Um, so thank you to Juco for that. And then I also talked about the 12-hour live stream, which is going to be on June the 2nd, which will start at 6 p.m. British summertime and finish at 6 a.m. British summertime. So 1 p.m. Eastern time to 1 a.m. Eastern time. And there will be prizes for the raffle. You can donate. You can scan the QR code on the screen, which will take you to the GoFundMe. I should probably just find the link as well. If you donate to the fundraiser, then you'll be entered into the raffle. And every time you donate, you'll be entered. So you can enter multiple times. And also, Verity, you're now automatically entered into the raffle because you have become a patron. So I've just put your name there in my little trackety check box. So how it's going to work is each person that enters the raffle will be given a number. So there we have Verity. You have a number. And then if there is another donation, you'll get another number. And all of the prizes will have numbers. And then we'll draw out one number and one number, and then that person will win that prize. On a random number generator. So that's how that's going to work on June the 2nd. We have some amazing prizes. There's loads more stuff that I haven't shown you in the thing. Cult Hackers mouse mats from Stephen Mather, who's also going to be doing a panel. I'm really looking forward to that. I'm really looking forward to seeing everybody at CrimeCon and saying hello and meeting people in person and just having a grand old time. So I was only going to tune in for 30 minutes or so. 2 hours later, here we are. Thank you all so much for coming to chat with me. I really, really appreciate it. And thank you from the bottom of my heart to the continued support that people have given this podcast for 3 years now. Who knows where we'll be in 3 years' time? I'm really, really looking forward to it. And I appreciate each and every one of you. And for people that are watching it back, feel free to still leave comments and say hi and engage in a conversation. I do try and reply to comments when I can. And I'll see you all on June the 2nd. Take care. Bye.